My neighbor called me last Tuesday morning, confused and frustrated. He had eaten what he described as a perfect dinner the night before. No red meat, no dessert, no bread, just a baked vegetable, some steamed broccoli, and a piece of grilled chicken. He tested before bed and saw 143, a reasonable number. He went to sleep feeling good about his choices. He woke up at 6 in the morning and tested again. 218. He called me because he could not explain it. He thought his meter was broken. Then he thought he had eaten something he was not aware of. Then he thought his medication had stopped working. I asked him one question. What vegetable did you eat? He told me, and I knew immediately what had happened. One vegetable caused that 75-point overnight spike. And the disturbing part is that his doctor had recommended it. It is sitting in millions of American kitchens right now. It is recommended in diabetes diet articles across the internet. It is considered healthy. Today I am going to rank the 7 vegetables most dangerous for blood sugar control in people over 60, from bad to catastrophic. Number 7 will surprise some of you. Number 2 flies completely under the radar. And number 1, the one that caused my neighbor's overnight spike, has a glycemic index in some preparations that exceeds pure table sugar. Higher than a donut. Higher than a slice of white bread. From a vegetable. And I want to be clear about what I am doing here. I am not telling you that vegetables are bad. Vegetables are foundational to good health. What I am telling you is that not all vegetables affect your blood sugar the same way. And treating all vegetables as equal when you have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes is a mistake that is silently sabotaging your glucose control every single day. Stay through to the end because the protection strategies I give you at the close of this video can reduce the blood sugar impact of even the worst vegetables on this list by 25 to 70%. The science on this is specific and practical, and I am going to walk you through every step. Welcome to Better Health Seniors. Let us get into it. Before we get to the list, I need to make sure you understand the tool we are using to evaluate these vegetables. Because most people have heard the term glycemic index, but have never had it explained in terms that actually connect to what they see on their meter. The glycemic index, or GI, is a ranking system from 0 to 100 that measures how quickly a specific food raises blood sugar compared to pure glucose, which is rated at 100. A food with a GI of 70 raises your blood sugar 70% as fast as pure glucose would. A food with a GI of 40 raises it about 40% as fast. Low GI foods are 55 or below. These digest slowly, produce a gradual glucose curve, and give your insulin system time to respond. Medium GI foods are 56 to 69. High GI foods are 70 and above. These digest rapidly, flood your bloodstream with glucose in a short window, and overwhelm an insulin response that is already compromised by age and insulin resistance. Here is why this matters specifically for you after age 60. Research from Harvard School of Public Health confirms that high glycemic index foods cause powerful spikes in blood sugar that are directly linked to increased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and metabolic complications. But here is the part most people miss. After 60, your cells are already significantly less responsive to insulin. The American Diabetes Association's 2024 Standards of Care documents this age-related decline in insulin sensitivity. So when a high GI food floods your bloodstream with glucose, your compromised insulin response struggles even more than it would have 20 years ago. The spike is higher. The duration is longer. The damage accumulates more rapidly. There is also a related concept called glycemic load, which accounts for both the GI of a food and how much of that food you actually eat. A food with a moderate GI that you eat in a large portion can produce a higher glycemic load than a high GI food eaten in a very small amount. I will use both concepts as we go through the list because both matter in practice. One more important point. Cooking method dramatically changes the glycemic index of many vegetables. The same vegetable can have a GI of 50 when prepared one way and a GI of 95 when prepared another way. I will explain the specific cooking effects as we go through each vegetable because this practical information is what actually changes what happens on your meter. Now, the 7 vegetables. Number 7 is corn. And yes, I know corn is technically a grain, but most Americans eat it as a vegetable. It appears in vegetable sections of grocery stores, and it shows up on dinner plates in vegetable portions. So we are including it here. Corn surprises people because it is sweet and feels light. but 1 cup of cooked corn contains approximately 31 grams of carbohydrates. For comparison, that is more carbohydrates than 2 slices of white bread in a single side dish. The glycemic index of sweet corn ranges from about 52 to 60, depending on how it is prepared. That puts it solidly in the medium GI category. So why is it on this list? Because of how people actually eat it. Nobody measures out a 1/4 cup of corn at a summer cookout. People eat a full ear of corn, which is close to 1 cup, delivering that entire 31-gram carbohydrate load at once. And canned corn frequently has added sugars on top of the natural starch content, pushing the effective glycemic impact even higher. The mechanism is straightforward. Corn is primarily starch. Your digestive enzymes break that starch down into glucose within about 20 to 30 minutes of eating. For someone over 60 with reduced insulin sensitivity, that glucose load lands in a bloodstream that is already struggling to clear it efficiently. Corn is not the worst vegetable on this list, but it is not the free food that most people treat it as. If you eat corn, limit yourself to a 1/4 cup as a side. Pair it with protein and fat at the same meal to slow the digestion curve, and never eat it as your primary vegetable at dinner. Number 6 is green peas. And this one frustrates me because green peas are in almost every diabetes-friendly recipe you will find online. They are green. They look healthy. They have fiber. People assume they are safe. Here is the reality. 1 cup of cooked green peas contains approximately 21 grams of carbohydrates and 8 grams of sugar. That sugar content is high for a vegetable. The glycemic index of green peas ranges from about 48 to 54, which technically puts them in the low to medium category. The problem is not the GI number in isolation. The problem is how peas are consumed in practice. People eat them by the cupful in casseroles, rice dishes, pasta dishes, and mixed vegetable medleys. And when you add a cup of peas to a plate that already has rice or pasta, you are stacking carbohydrates on carbohydrates. The combined glycemic load of that meal becomes a genuine problem for blood sugar management. There is also something specific about the sugar in peas. The 8 grams of sugar per cup is naturally occurring, but naturally occurring sugar still triggers an insulin response. Your body does not differentiate between sugar from a vegetable and sugar from a dessert at the biochemical level. Glucose is glucose. If you enjoy peas, keep portions to a 1/4 cup per meal and always pair them with a primary protein source and non-starchy vegetables. Never let peas be the main component of a meal, and be especially careful about eating them in combination with other starchy foods. Number 5 is butternut squash and its winter squash relatives. And I want to be honest with you about why this one belongs on the list, because it genuinely is nutrient-dense. It is rich in beta-carotene, potassium, and vitamin C. I am not dismissing those benefits. But 1 cup of cooked butternut squash contains approximately 22 grams of carbohydrates with about 4 grams of natural sugar. The glycemic index of butternut squash sits around 51 in its basic form. Medium category. Here is the specific problem with butternut squash that most content never addresses. It is almost always overcooked or pureed. And cooking method dramatically changes the glycemic impact of this vegetable. When butternut squash is roasted until very soft, or when it is pureed into a soup, the cellular structure breaks down completely. This makes the natural starches and sugars far more accessible to your digestive enzymes. The GI of pureed butternut squash soup is meaningfully higher than the GI of the same squash roasted firm. You are eating the same vegetable with a potentially very different glycemic consequence depending entirely on how it was prepared. And the portion problem is significant. A standard bowl of butternut squash soup at a restaurant can contain 2 to 3 cups of pureed squash. That is 44 to 66 grams of carbohydrates in a single serving from one side dish. If you eat butternut squash, keep portions to half a cup, roast it at a moderate temperature until just tender rather than soft, and serve it alongside substantial protein. Never eat it pureed in large quantities if you are managing blood sugar. Number 4 is beets. And this one has a particular irony to it, because beets are genuinely beneficial for cardiovascular health. The dietary nitrates in beets improve blood vessel function and are associated with lower blood pressure. Those are real, documented benefits. But here is the blood sugar side of the equation that the beet superfood marketing never mentions. 1 cup of cooked beets contains approximately 17 grams of carbohydrates and 14 grams of sugar. 14 grams of sugar per cup. That is an extraordinarily high sugar content for a vegetable. The glycemic index of cooked beets is approximately 64, placing them in the medium to high range. But that number understates the issue because the sugar in beets is primarily sucrose, the same type of sugar in table sugar, which your body breaks down and absorbs relatively quickly. The preparation problem compounds this significantly. Beet juice, which is very popular among health-conscious seniors, is essentially concentrated beet sugar with the fiber removed. The fiber in whole beets provides some digestive buffering. Juice eliminates that buffer entirely. You are drinking a concentrated sugar solution marketed as a health food. Pickled beets frequently have added sugar on top of the natural sugar content. Roasted beets undergo caramelization, which concentrates the sugars even further. For people with healthy blood sugar, the cardiovascular benefits of beets may well outweigh the glucose impact. For people over 60 managing type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, the equation is different. If you eat beets, limit portions to a quarter cup of cooked beets, always pair them with protein and fat, and never drink beet juice. Number 3 is sweet potatoes. And I already know this is going to generate pushback in the comments because sweet potatoes have been positioned as the safe alternative to white potatoes for so long that challenging that narrative feels almost heretical. Here is what is accurate. Sweet potatoes are better than white potatoes for blood sugar. They have more fiber. They have a lower GI than russet potatoes. I am not disputing that. Here is what is also accurate. Better than the worst option on this list does not mean safe for unrestricted consumption. The glycemic index of sweet potatoes ranges from approximately 44 to 94, depending on the variety and preparation method. That is an enormous range. A boiled sweet potato may have a GI of 44. A baked orange sweet potato may have a GI in the 70s or above. The variety matters. The cooking method matters enormously. One medium sweet potato contains approximately 27 grams of carbohydrates and 5.5 grams of sugar. Research examining postprandial glucose responses found that sweet potatoes still cause measurable and significant blood sugar increases in people with diabetes, just not as dramatically as russet potatoes. And the preparation trap catches most people. People rarely eat a plain, moderately sized sweet potato. At Thanksgiving and holiday meals, they are prepared with butter, brown sugar, marshmallows. They are mashed with added sweeteners. The base vegetable's moderate glycemic impact becomes something significantly worse once common additions are included. Even without additions, a large baked sweet potato can deliver 40 to 50 grams of carbohydrates. That is the equivalent of 3 or more slices of bread in carbohydrate load. If you are going to eat sweet potatoes, choose smaller ones, keep portions to a quarter of a medium potato, select boiled over baked when possible, and pair them with substantial protein. The purple and white variety sweet potatoes tend to have lower GI than the orange variety that most Americans eat. Number 2 is parsnips, and I can almost guarantee that this one is not on your radar. Nobody warns you about parsnips. They do not appear on the typical avoid lists in diabetes nutrition guides. They look like a pale carrot. They show up in vegetable medleys, roasted vegetable dishes, and winter stews looking completely innocent. The glycemic index of cooked parsnips is approximately 97. Let me put that number in context. Pure glucose is rated at 100. White bread is rated at approximately 75. A glazed donut is approximately 76. Parsnips, at a GI of around 97, come closer to pure glucose than to almost any common food you have been avoiding. 1 cup of cooked parsnips contains approximately 27 grams of carbohydrates, primarily as rapidly digested starch and sugar. Parsnips are a root vegetable that is almost entirely starch in its structure. When cooked, that starch gelatinizes, meaning the structure breaks down and your digestive enzymes can attack it rapidly. The glucose release is fast and substantial. The preparation methods most commonly used for parsnips make this worse. Roasted until caramelized, the sugars in the outer layers are literally browning, concentrating the sweetness. Mashed or pureed into soups, the cellular structure is completely destroyed, maximizing digestibility and glucose release. These are the 2 most common ways parsnips are served, and both maximize their glycemic impact. What makes parsnips particularly dangerous in a practical sense is the lack of awareness. People see them in a roasted vegetable medley at a restaurant or a holiday dinner and eat a full portion with no concern because nothing in their experience has flagged parsnips as a blood sugar problem. They eat a full serving, potentially multiple servings, and then cannot understand their readings. My recommendation on parsnips is direct. If you are managing blood sugar after 60, remove parsnips from your regular diet. The blood sugar cost is not justified by any unique nutritional benefit that you cannot get from a truly low glycemic vegetable. If parsnips appear in a dish you are served socially, treat them as you would treat a piece of bread and account for them accordingly. Number 1. White potatoes. Specifically russet potatoes, but all common varieties of white potato belong in this discussion. This is what my neighbor ate the night before his blood sugar went from 143 to 218. A baked russet potato has a glycemic index that ranges from approximately 85 to 111 depending on preparation. A medium-baked russet potato contains about 37 grams of carbohydrates. Mashed potatoes have a measured GI of approximately 87 to 108 in various studies. One analysis found mashed potato GI at 108, which is higher than pure glucose itself at 100. Your body, in some preparations, processes mashed potatoes faster than it processes pure sugar. The biochemistry of why potatoes cause this effect is specific and worth understanding. Potatoes are composed primarily of amylopectin, which is a highly branched form of starch. Research published in PLOS One in 2023 examining 60 potato cultivars confirmed that most commercially available potato varieties have very high amylopectin content, and that consumption of high amylopectin foods elicits a rapid spike in blood glucose that is undesirable for people who are pre-diabetic, diabetic, or obese. When you cook a potato, the heat gelatinizes the starch, breaking down the cellular structure that would otherwise slow digestion. Your digestive enzyme amylase attacks the gelatinized amylopectin starch and converts it to glucose within minutes. Research published in the Journal of Diabetes Investigation in 2024 confirmed that foods subjected to moist heat cooking techniques, like boiled or baked potatoes, typically contain high proportions of rapidly digestible starch, meaning starch that converts to glucose within 20 minutes of enzymatic contact. The clinical consequence in a person over 60 with insulin resistance plays out like this. Within 15 minutes of eating a baked potato, glucose begins entering the bloodstream. Within 30 minutes, blood sugar can spike by 60 to 100 points. Peak blood sugar typically occurs at 60 to 90 minutes. For many people managing type 2 diabetes, that peak lands in the 200s or above from a single medium potato. And then the aftermath creates a secondary problem. That massive insulin response eventually brings blood sugar down, but it often overshoots, dropping glucose below normal. This reactive hypoglycemia then triggers intense hunger and cravings for more carbohydrates. The spike from the potato leads to a crash, which leads to more eating, which leads to another spike. Research from Harvard's nutrition source has documented this blood sugar roller coaster effect from high glycemic foods and its contribution to metabolic dysfunction over time. The ubiquity of potatoes makes this particularly difficult to manage. French fries, baked potatoes, mashed potatoes, hash browns, potato soup, potato salad, chips. They are everywhere in American food culture. Restaurants serve them as the default side dish with almost every meal. They are inexpensive, filling, and deeply associated with comfort. And doctors, when they say eat more vegetables, rarely differentiate between broccoli and potatoes. That undifferentiated advice is directly contributing to blood sugar control failures in millions of people. Before I give you the protection strategies, there is one specific preparation method for potatoes that the research supports as meaningfully reducing their blood sugar impact. And I want to give you the honest science on this because it is real, it is practical, and it is backed by clinical evidence. When you cook a potato and then refrigerate it for at least 12 hours before eating, something specific happens to the starch structure. The cooling process causes the amylopectin starch to retrograde, which means the starch molecules reassemble into a more ordered crystalline structure that your digestive enzymes cannot break down as efficiently. This is called resistant starch because it resists digestion in the small intestine. Research published in Nutrients in 2019 by Patterson and colleagues specifically found that chilled potatoes produced significantly reduced blood glucose responses, lower insulin levels, and lower glucose-dependent insulinotropic peptide compared to freshly cooked hot potatoes. A study published in 2023 by University of Florida researchers noted this method provides approximately a 25 to 40% lower glycemic impact than eating the same potato hot. The resistant starch formed by this cooling process behaves more like dietary fiber. It travels to your large intestine, where gut bacteria ferment it rather than converting it to glucose in the small intestine. This produces short-chain fatty acids that actually benefit metabolic health. However, I want to be clear about what this means and what it does not mean. Cooling a potato reduces its glycemic impact by roughly 25 to 40%. It does not eliminate the blood sugar impact. A potato that would have spiked your blood sugar by 80 points might spike it by 50 to 60 points after proper cooling. That is improvement, not resolution. And it only works if you eat the potato cold or gently reheated at low temperature. Reheating at high heat largely undoes the resistant starch formation. So the practical application is this. If you are going to eat white potatoes and want to minimize damage, cook them, cool them in the refrigerator for a minimum of 12 to 24 hours, and eat them in a small portion of a quarter cup as part of a meal that includes significant protein and fat. This is a harm reduction strategy, not a green light to eat potatoes freely. Now I want to give you practical, research-backed strategies that apply to all of the vegetables on this list and that meaningfully change what happens on your meter. Strategy 1. Always pair starchy vegetables with protein and fat. This is the single most impactful thing you can do. Research has documented that combining a starchy food with protein and fat at the same meal dramatically reduces the glycemic impact. One analysis found that potatoes paired with chicken, canola oil, and salad had a glycemic impact of 54, compared to a GI of 108 for plain mashed potatoes alone. Same potato, different preparation and pairing. Half the glycemic impact. The fat and protein slow gastric emptying, meaning glucose enters your bloodstream gradually rather than all at once. Strategy 2. Food sequencing. This is one of the most underutilized strategies in blood sugar management, and the research on it is striking. Eat your protein and non-starchy vegetables first. Wait 10 minutes. Then if you eat any starchy vegetable, eat it last in the meal sequence. Research has found this sequencing can reduce peak blood glucose by up to 70% compared to eating the starchy component first. The protein and fiber you have already consumed slow gastric emptying. So when the starchy food arrives, it is entering a digestive environment that processes it much more gradually. Strategy 3. Time starchy vegetables to earlier in the day. Your insulin sensitivity follows a circadian pattern. It is highest in the morning and progressively declines through the day. Research on this circadian insulin sensitivity pattern shows that the same food eaten at breakfast produces a meaningfully lower blood sugar response than the same food eaten at dinner. If you are going to eat any of the vegetables on this list, consume them at breakfast or early lunch, not at dinner. The vegetables that caused my neighbor's overnight spike were eaten at dinner, precisely when insulin sensitivity is lowest. Strategy 4. Portion discipline with starchy vegetables. Use a quarter cup as your maximum serving of any of the 7 vegetables on this list. This is not arbitrary. At a quarter cup, most of these vegetables produce a glycemic load that is manageable when combined with the other strategies. At a full cup, the glycemic load of even moderately problematic vegetables can overwhelm a compromised insulin response. Strategy 5. Build your plate around truly low glycemic vegetables. Leafy greens including spinach, kale, and lettuce. Cruciferous vegetables including broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. Non-starchy vegetables including zucchini, bell peppers, asparagus, green beans, and cucumbers. These vegetables have GI values typically below 20. They are rich in fiber, vitamins, and phytochemicals. They will not spike your blood sugar regardless of portion size. Build your meals around these, and use the starchy vegetables on this list as small additions rather than main components. Strategy 6. Check your meter. This is the most individually useful strategy of all. The glycemic index gives us population averages, but individual responses to specific foods vary based on gut microbiome composition, insulin sensitivity level, medication status, and metabolic health. The only way to know exactly how a specific vegetable affects your specific blood sugar is to test before eating and again 90 minutes after eating. 2-hour post-meal testing is the gold standard recommendation from the American Diabetes Association in their 2024 Standards of Care. Your meter is the most accurate feedback tool you have. My neighbor now understands his numbers in a way he did not before. He has not eliminated potatoes completely. He has changed how he prepares them, when he eats them, and what he pairs them with. His fasting numbers have stabilized. His doctor has noticed. And he has stopped waking up at 6 in the morning wondering what happened. The vegetables on this list are not your enemies. Corn has fiber and nutrients. Peas have protein. Beets genuinely help cardiovascular health. Sweet potatoes are rich in beta-carotene. Even white potatoes have vitamin C and potassium. These are not toxic foods. But you are managing blood sugar in a body that is over 60, with insulin sensitivity that has declined over decades, and with a pancreatic response that is slower than it was in your 40s. In that context, the glycemic impact of specific foods matters more than it did before. The blanket advice to eat more vegetables, without distinguishing between spinach and a baked potato, has done real harm to real people. You now know what the distinction is. You know why it matters. And you have 6 specific strategies that the research supports for minimizing the blood sugar impact of even the most problematic vegetables on this list. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these vegetables surprised you most. Was it parsnips? Beets? Sweet potatoes? I read every comment and I respond to as many as I can. If this information serves you, subscribe to Better Health Seniors. Every video on this channel is built on peer-reviewed research, written in plain language, for people your age who deserve accurate information about how food affects their body. I will see you in the next video.